David Hotyat was born in 1973 in northern France. His early life was not marked by violence, but by something quieter: struggle, frustration, and a growing sense of failure. He came from a modest background, nothing extraordinary, nothing that would predict what was coming. But those who later studied his life noticed a pattern. While others around him moved forward, David stayed stuck. Jobs didn't last, opportunities slipped away, and over time, something began to build inside him: resentment. By the early 2000s, David had moved to the ski resort town of Le Grand Bornand in the French Alps. It was there that everything changed, because it was there he met a man named Xavier Flactif. Flactif was everything David was not: successful, wealthy, confident, a property developer who owned multiple chalets. David even rented one of those chalets from him, and at first, it seemed like a normal landlord-tenant relationship. But beneath the surface, there was tension. Witnesses later described arguments, disputes over money, complaints about work and payments. But it wasn't just financial, it was personal. David saw in Flactif everything he felt he had failed to become, and that kind of comparison can become dangerous, because over time, jealousy doesn't just stay jealousy, it turns into obsession. Investigators would later conclude that envy and resentment were at the core of everything, and by April 2003, that resentment had reached a breaking point. What no one knew was that behind the quiet mechanic, a decision had already been made. April 11, 2003, it started like any other day, but by the end of it, a family of 5 would vanish: Xavier Flactif, his partner, Graziella Ortolano, and their 3 children, gone, without a trace. When investigators entered the chalet, nothing seemed disturbed. Food was still in the fridge, meals left unfinished. It looked as if the family had simply disappeared. At first, police considered the possibility that the family had fled. Rumors circulated: financial problems, debt, secrets. Even their car was found near Geneva Airport, which only added to the mystery. But something didn't feel right, because families don't just vanish like that. And slowly, the truth began to emerge. Hidden inside the chalet were small clues: tiny traces of blood, fragments of a child's tooth, signs that something violent had happened and then been carefully cleaned. This wasn't a disappearance. This was a crime scene. And the deeper investigators looked, the darker it became, because whoever did this didn't just kill, they tried to erase everything. Meanwhile, David Hotyat did something strange. He spoke publicly, appearing in interviews, criticizing the victims, complaining about them, showing visible resentment. It was subtle, but investigators noticed, because sometimes, the person who talks the most is hiding the most. And soon, their attention turned directly toward him. By September 2003, police had enough. David Hotyat was arrested, along with his partner and associates. At first, he tried to maintain control, calm, measured, detached, but evidence was closing in. DNA traces, witness testimony, stolen items from the victims found in his possession. And then, the pressure worked. Very early in custody, he confessed, admitting to killing all 5 members of the family. According to investigators, it began as a confrontation, an argument with Xavier Flactif, and then, a gunshot. Hotyat later claimed he didn't expect the weapon to fire, but once it did, everything escalated. To eliminate witnesses, he killed the rest of the family, including the children. The level of control was chilling. After the murders, he transported the bodies into a nearby forest and burned them, trying to destroy all evidence. In interrogation, his demeanor remained cold. Psychological experts later described him as having a tendency to avoid emotions, with an ideal of control. But then, he changed his story, retracting his confession, claiming 2 unknown men had committed the murders and forced him to help dispose of the bodies. Investigators didn't believe him, because the evidence was overwhelming, and the truth was already clear. In 2006, David Hotyat stood trial. The case shocked France. A family of 5, murdered, not by a stranger, but by someone they knew, someone who lived nearby. The prosecution painted a clear picture. This was not just anger. This was jealousy, a deep resentment toward success that turned into violence. Hotyat's defense tried to create doubt, pointing to his retracted confession, suggesting alternative explanations. But it wasn't enough, because the evidence told a consistent story: planning, execution, and attempted cover-up. In the end, the verdict came: guilty. David Hotyat was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 22 years. His accomplices also received prison sentences, because this crime was not entirely his alone, but his role was the most devastating. To this day, the case remains one of the most shocking family murders in modern French history, not just because of the brutality, but because of the motive. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't survival, it was envy, a slow-burning emotion that turned into something irreversible. And that's what makes this case so disturbing, because it reminds us of something simple and terrifying. Sometimes, the greatest danger doesn't come from strangers, it comes from the people watching quietly, comparing, resenting, waiting, until one day, they act.